Well, greetings to the brightest audience in America. We are continuing down the path of the Walt Brown controversy, looking at some of the documents and letters that were going back and forth between Walt Brown and other people. And now we are in, I think it's 2001. I'll show you the times, how you get to these things. Let's see, I'll just show you. You know the routine by now. You just go into hydroplate.org, and then you're going to go into the hydroplate resources, down to hydroplate controversy, and then up to the timeline. And let me just make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. Yep, that looks good. Okay, the timeline. And then you're going to starts in 1986 and goes through, and they try to do arbitration, then mediation, and then it's 96. And this is where we went years and years and years. Now we're in 2001. We're going to look at the flood model number right here. And what's really neat is flood 2. Okay, this is part 2 of it. You can just click on that and you should have it. If not, I can go back to the other one. Okay, let's go back to this one. I should have it over here. Yeah, this is what's going to be underneath that. Okay, so we read all this down until the link. This is Pastor Lee explaining why he's getting involved. Okay, so now we're going to jump off where we left off last time. As a lead into Pastor Kevin's correspondence, the following 3 letters between Dr. Brown and Dr. Weiland, AIG Australia, provide the background that caused Pastor Lee to start corresponding with Dr. Weiland. Letter from Dr. Walt Brown to Carl Weiland. This was dated October 30th, 2001. Dear Carl, since my 2 mailings, you and the many specifics, since my 2 mailings to you and the many specifics sent, I have presumed that AIG would stop putting out uninformed and incorrect information about my work. Therefore, my tasks was limited, try to correct what others have heard from AIG in the past. Accordingly, and as present, I have sent and will continue to send our complete exchange of letters and attachments just to those who I know have heard of or asked about our differences. As of now, less than 10 people. You saw and had a chance to comment on the packet first. I wish you had given me a chance to respond to the mischaracterizations in AIG's Walt Brown response. Notice the contrast. AIG has put out false information about my work for years. I have never said derogatory things about AIG. In fact, have recommended their publications in my book. Until a few weeks ago, I had ignored AIG's misrepresentations. 2. AIG explains our differences from their perspective only. I have sent our complete exchange of letters to a handful of people so readers can see both perspectives. 3. Many have heard AIG's perspective. If AIG's misinformation stops, few will hear mine. 4. AIG never asked for my comments ahead of time to ensure accuracy. I went to AIG first. 5. No one at AIG has read my position on matters where we disagree. I have studied AIG's positions. 6. I am willing to discuss our scientific differences in a fair and open forum. AIG is not. However, this is all in the past. Where do we go from here? If AIG decides to expand the audience thousands-fold, so everyone who goes to their respective websites can learn about our difficulties, that would be unfortunate. On the other hand, once misinformation ceases, collaboration could begin. I am delighted that you would like us to meet to discuss ways to improve our relationship. Thank you, Carl, for that offer. Here are 2 possibilities that are more practical than my traveling all the way to Florence, Kentucky. You could come to Phoenix on your way to or from Kentucky. Phoenix is almost on the way. 2. I could meet you in Los Angeles or wherever you land on our West Coast, since on your way to Kentucky or back to Australia. Before locking this in, it would be wise for us to agree on an agenda, or at least specific things to accomplish. As for the problems you described in your letter, the solution is simple. AIG should stop putting out uninformed and incorrect information. I understand that your comments about the hydroplate theory may have a negative spin, but that doesn't bother me. I just ask that any statements by AIG be informed and accurate. That doesn't require, as you say, a joint communique, creation politics, or non-specific plans to attempt to work on healing the problems. Nor do we need to horse trade, i.e., if you change this word in your standard response, I will change that word. Let's just be as accurate as possible. Again, thank you for your offer. I truly hope we can meet. Sincerely, Walt. Response from Dr. Weiland to Dr. Brown, November 5th, 2001. Dear Walt, he wrote that in October 30th, so November 5th. That's a timely response. Dear Walt, once again, your letter has confirmed the seemingly never-ending quagmire one seems to get into in such correspondence. Before fleshing that out, let me say that I am happy to explore further the issue of meeting somewhere on the west side of the U.S., which makes sense. However, I regret the following matters in your reply. First, since you raised the word spin, I regret the way in which my attempts to come to an understanding which makes everyone content have been spun into a context of horse trading and similar loaded words. I also regret the continual reference to accuracy, in which implies that either A, we do not have the same desire as you for accuracy, and or B, accuracy is an alternative to coming to an accommodation in the ways I suggest. In fact, A is not true, and B is a caricature of reality. If I were to ask a dozen creationists to give an accurate representation of a number of different things, issues within creationism, same for any complex scientific model, or even any complex relationship thing, then without any sort of dishonesty in any form, you would have a dozen different ways to describe reality. Furthermore, I was asking for a demonstration of sincerity by all parties prior to such a meeting. I see no point in continuing with planning for it while you continue to insist that you will do as you please in putting out whatever passes between us. I don't mind if you publish my part, if in whole. And I don't care if to one person or 10,000, to me, the principle is important because it is bordering on disingenuous to spin, your word, the situation as if you are the apostle of disinterested accuracy who will just passively put all of it in the public arena, because that correspondence includes major portions created by yourself, the accuracy of which is itself under dispute, e.g., I respectfully reject the accuracy or fairness of your description of Ken Ham, who your characterization of this ministry. Also, your characterization of this ministry. I don't see what is difficult about suggesting of holding off on both sides till after the meeting, at which time surely we might both come to realize that what we put out has to be changed for accuracy and fairness. If I cannot have your commitment to do that, how can I see you as sincerely committed to an open-minded, fair approach at such a meeting? This part is non-negotiable to me in order to justify either of us going out of our way to have a meeting. Personally, I will also be seeking at that meeting to raise the matter of how deeply unfair and unchristian it appears to me to see you disseminate secondhand disparagements of Ken's character. Note from Pastor Kevin. It was this statement by Dr. Weiland that caused me to enter correspondence with AIG. Months earlier, I had met with Ken Ham in a face-to-face meeting in Colorado and encouraged him to stop spreading false information about Dr. Brown's theory, especially since he said he had not read Dr. Brown's book. I wrote to Walt about the encounter, saying that Ken acted arrogant and hostile toward Walt, calling him a lone wolf that was not doing anything to benefit the creation message. Walt included my comments in a form response to the questions that he titled Scientific Differences Between Answers in Genesis and the Center for Scientific Creation, CSC. Walt gave Carl the courtesy of reading the preliminary version before making it widely available. It was my words about Ken Ham, now in Walt's form response, that Dr. Weiland is referring to in the paragraph. Okay, back to Dr. Weiland. Nothing AIG has ever written about you, to my knowledge, has attacked you in a personal way. Regardless of whether or not AIG was unwilling, unfair, or inaccurate in its comments on your work, etc. Two wrongs, if that were to happen, did not make a right. You seem to be judging your plan to continue disseminating this character denigration by saying that we put things out about you that were not accurate. But please note that whatever may have been inaccurate in what we put out, it was not knowingly so, and was mostly in the form of an opinion, which we would have known would not have thrilled you. I have always been willing to change things in the interest of fairness and accuracy for anyone. I am not offering this now because of some fear of any consequence or whatever. I would do it regardless on principle. AIG is a moderately large organization, possibly 90 to 100 employees worldwide. As such, sometimes the left hand does not know what the right hand, or indeed some of the fingerprints, are doing. For instance, it is embarrassing to find out that a relatively junior staff member put out the statement that John Baumgartner was a staff scientist when he is not. Not implying that we would not want him on staff, far from it. But it is neither pertinent nor fair to use this to bolster your case that AIG is not interested in accuracy. It is especially inappropriate to link it somehow in the consumer's mind with the attitude of senior level people in the ministry to your work. At face value, reading through your material, I would say it certainly looks as if you have had a raw deal from the creationist circles, regardless of whether your model is right or wrong. But, and please understand my Australian bluntness here, it is not meant aggressively. The truth is that the more we correspond and I see how my statements are dealt with, the more I wonder, what would happen if these people were to be called to the stand? Would their perception of what happened be the same as yours? I hasten to add that I am assuming that all parties are acting honestly and conscientiously. It is just that in this fallen world, fallen humanity being what it is, our perceptions of all sorts of things, but especially past events, vary widely. And so does our interpretation, even of things in the present. Which is why I think the only hope is a personal meeting. I don't believe in formal agendas for these things, but in majoring on personal relationships. I think you will find me an easy person to get along with. There is no reason why we can't both be content with the outcome before the Lord, and why we can't work towards such contentment without sacrificing any accuracy or any principle, and without necessarily coming to a scientific agreement. Christians in this battle must learn to be better at relationships in spite of disagreements and in spite of failings on both sides. And I readily admit that in this arena, we have also often failed. So as far as I'm concerned, at this point, the ball is in your court, Walt. I will try my best to arrange to be either in Phoenix or at worst within reach, such as LA. I ask for a straightforward commitment between us to put everything else in terms of response on hold for this short time till then. I am quite firm in this point, i.e., no further attempts to justify putting out this stuff which is damaging to relationships, especially while its accuracy is still a source of dispute between us. I am looking for you to come back to me with a single positive response in principle, and then let's explore dates and times, etc., to see if it can work. Sincerely, Dr. Carl Weiland, CEO, Answers in Genesis, Brisbane, Australia. The following is Walt's response to Carl's letter. The reader must understand that these letters are being sent after years of AIG misrepresentation of Dr. Brown's work, which Walt ignored until too many distractions were causing. The distractions were caused by people calling him to ask what was going on. Okay, Center for Scientific Creation, Dr. Carl Weiland. Okay, from Dr. Brown. Dear Carl, this problem is completely of AIG's making and has gone on for several years. While I presume and hope you are no longer sending out inaccurate statements about my work, you have not said that. I have no reason to believe you have done anything to correct those past errors. Worse yet, you say you won't look into the matter enough to see any errors. The subject is too complex. You trust the Gang of Six, AIG's term, even though they know little of what I have written. Now you want me to delay making the most limited of corrective steps I can make? No, Carl. The ball is in No, Carl, the ball is in your court. My letter to you on October 30th clearly states my position. Please don't minimize the problem by blaming a relatively junior staff member or AIG's size for all the inaccuracies AIG has spread. That shows me you don't understand the problem. First of all, organizational attitudes and practices are set at the top. Second, if you cannot monitor the public criticisms of your people level at your work, if you cannot monitor the public criticisms your people level at the work of your other creationists, then you have an additional management problem. If you cannot monitor the public criticisms your people level at the work of other creationists, then you have an additional management problem. Third, that staff member's single error was, as I wrote, the least of the errors in those 4 pages. I explained many inaccuracies in AIG's standard response about my work. AIG's blind acceptance of what John Baumgartner wrote was a serious error. Your broadcasting those inaccuracies multiplied the problem. With just a little effort to understand the scientific issues, something people expect from an international creation science organization, you could have avoided those inaccuracies and saved both of us a lot of time and frustration. AIG's scientific competence was not kept up with, AIG's scientific competence has not kept up with its expansion. Most importantly, you wouldn't have misled many creationists. You may counter by saying that I am blindly accepting what Pastor Lee has reported. No, I have heard similar remarks from others who have talked with Ken Ham. I have not mentioned those comments because they were hearsay, and the parties who reported Kent's blunt hostility were embarrassed and uncomfortable telling me about it. Besides Pastor Lee's statement, it is not hearsay or secondhand, as you say. It is a firsthand account. Pastor Lee has written at his own initiative an expanded version of his conversation with Ken and recently sent them to you. I have also received a copy of his letter and noticed that Pastor Lee has withdrawn comments about lying. My future mailings will reflect these additions and corrections. They will also go to those less than 10 people who have already received the packet. If any stances you took in your earlier letters to me change as a result of Pastor Lee's letter, please let me know. Beyond that, there should be no further need for a lengthy correspondence stating our positions. Of course, I would appreciate knowing if AIG rethinks the sources of our differences, reads what I have written, and describes it accurately. You could do this within a few days. Had it been done weeks ago, my limited corrective steps would have been unnecessary. Because AIG caused the problem, AIG should fix it post haste. Sincerely, Walt Brown. The following is Pastor Lee's letter to Carl, which resulted from the above correspondence from Dr. Brown and Dr. Weiland. Kevin Lee, Port Orchard, Washington, to Carl Weiland, November 13th, 2001. Greetings in the name of our precious Lord and Savior. You know what? This is going to be long, I bet. This might be where we might want to cut it. Yeah, I think we will. How long are we here? Yeah, we're still towards the top. And yeah, we'll cut it. Let's remove this. There we go. Yeah, that's going to be when we start into Pastor Lee's discussions, and those look pretty long. So we're going to cut this right here. And I played Walt Brown's hydroplate theory last time, and I played it as a I played it. And the sound didn't go. So we're going to share a tab if we can. Let's see. We'll try this one. You know what? We'll just try that, see if it happens. Okay, we're gonna go back here. We're sharing this tab. We're gonna go into solidify your faith. We're gonna go down to the hydroplate theory. We're going to play this. Am I sharing it? Are you guys seeing this? Oh, we didn't. Okay, you didn't see what I did. Basically, I am going to add, where did that go? Okay, I'm gonna add this to the stage. Yeah. Since you didn't have sound the last time I went through this, we're going to let Walt Brown explain it. Hopefully the sound will show up this time since I am sharing a tab. Hopefully this will work. And otherwise we will start the next. This is about 10 minutes long. We'll start another one in about 15. And so we will play this. Hopefully you'll get the sound this time.
We can see on our planet many very strange features that can now be linked together and systematically explained as a result of a cataclysmic global flood whose waters erupted from subterranean chambers with an unimaginable amount of explosive energy. This explanation shows how major mountains formed very quickly. It explains our coal, oil, and methane deposits, rapid continental drift, why we find on the ocean floor huge trenches, hundreds of canyons, and tens of thousands of volcanoes. It explains the formation of the layered strata and almost all fossils, the frozen mammoths, the so-called ice ages, and major land canyons, especially the Grand Canyon. The pre-flood Earth probably had only one very large supercontinent covered with lush vegetation. There were seas and rivers. The mountains were smaller than today, perhaps 5,000 feet high. According to the hydroplate theory, about half the water that is now in our oceans was originally contained in interconnected subterranean chambers. This water formed a thin spherical shell, at least a mile thick, perhaps 60 miles below the surface of the pre-flood Earth. Increasing pressure in the subterranean water stretched the crust just as a balloon stretches when the pressure inside increases. Failure in the crust began with a microscopic crack which grew in both directions at about 2 miles a second. This crack, following the path of least resistance, encircled the globe in about 3 hours. As the crack raced around the Earth, the overlying rock crust opened up like a rip in a tightly stretched cloth. The subterranean water was under extreme pressure because of the weight of the 60 miles of rock pressing down on it. So the water exploded violently out of this rupture. All along the globe-encircling crack, fountains of water jetted supersonically into and far above the atmosphere. The spray from this enormous fountain produced torrential rain such as the Earth has never experienced before or after. The Bible states that all the fountains of the great deep burst open on one day, and it describes these events about 5,000 years ago that we can now tie together scientifically in cause and effect order. Some of the water jetting high above the stratosphere froze into supercooled ice crystals and produced massive ice dumps, burying, suffocating, and instantly freezing many animals, including the frozen mammoths of Siberia and Alaska. The high-pressure fountains eroded the crumbling rock on both sides of the crack, producing huge volumes of sediments that settled out of this muddy water all over the Earth. These sediments trapped and quickly buried plants and animals, forming the fossil record. Vegetation, uprooted by the floodwaters, accumulated in certain regions where it was buried and compressed, rapidly becoming our coal, oil, and methane deposits by processes we can duplicate in the laboratory today. Eventually, the rupture became so wide that the newly exposed compressed rock beneath the subterranean chamber sprung upward, giving birth to the mid-oceanic ridge that wraps around the Earth like a seam of a baseball. The continental plates, the hydroplates, with lubricating water still beneath them, slid downhill away from the rising mid-Atlantic ridge. After the massive, slowly accelerating continental plates reached speeds of well over 60 miles an hour, they ran into resistances and, like a crashing continental-sized train, compressed, crushed, and buckled. As the continents crushed and thickened, they rose out of the floodwaters. The portions of the hydroplates that buckled down formed ocean trenches. Those that buckled up formed mountains. This is why the major mountain chains are generally parallel to the oceanic ridges from which they slid. This also explains why today's continents do not have a jigsaw fit against each other, as so many textbooks mistakenly claim. Instead, the continents would fit much better against the sides of the mid-Atlantic ridge from where the continental drift began. The hydroplates, in sliding away from the mid-Atlantic ridge, opened up very deep ocean basins into which the floodwaters eventually drained. This movement and the resulting compression and buckling was so cataclysmic that it occurred within a single day. Immediately after the flood, sea level was considerably lower than it is today, so land bridges connected every continent. This allowed people and animals to spread and repopulate the post-flood Earth. As the thickened continents slowly sank into the Earth's mantle, the new and very deep ocean floors had to rise in compensation for the downward flow of mass. Therefore, sea level slowly rose for a few centuries after the flood and eventually reached today's level. As sea levels rose, river channels were drowned, channels that had been cut down to the lowered sea level by the heavy drainage after the flood. This explains the famous submarine canyons that are extensions of our rivers, such as the Amazon, the Congo, the Indus, the Hudson, and the Ganges. Because some submarine canyons are almost 3 miles below today's sea level, we can conclude that sea level and some seafloors were about 3 miles lower than today. The rising sea eventually flooded the natural bridges and produced the look of the continents as we see them today, separated by water. As the floodwaters drained off the continents, every continental basin was naturally left brimful of water, producing many post-flood lakes. Because of local conditions, some of these lakes simply dried up. Others continued to collect water from rainfall and drainage from higher elevations. Sometimes a large lake spilled over its rim at the lowest point, eroding a notch. If the rim wall was composed of sediments that were still soft, the escaping water quickly enlarged and deepened the notch. As the volume and speed of the rushing water increased, so did its eroding power, until the entire lake surged through a deep slit, forming a canyon. The largest canyon formed by this process is the Grand Canyon in Arizona. North and east of the Grand Canyon was a huge lake that I identified in 1987 and named Grand Lake. Grand Lake held twice the volume of water that is in Lake Michigan. Grand Lake spilled over its rim and carved this spectacular funnel 20 miles south of Page, Arizona, catastrophically forming the Grand Canyon within a few weeks and leaving a living testament to this terrible global flood, which can be studied in person today.
And there you have it. You can purchase that at the, oh boy, let's get out of this. Okay, you can get that. You can purchase that at missionimperative.org or .com. That's Mike Snavely's thing. He's got 2 really good websites. We will, let's see, we're going to add something to the stage. We'll just show you real quickly where you can find that and also where you can find that video. We are going to
go from XL to M
this.
by Halloween.
That's good. What is going on? What's going on? Sorry about that. Yeah, pilot error here. Sorry about that. We are going to share my screen. And we are going to show you where to get that video. That's Mike Snavely's Mission Imperative. And so we're going to share this screen. We will share this with you. Now, that video that you just saw was Mike Snavely's, and that's going to be at, we'll just jump in here, go into Mission Imperative, missionimperative.com, and that's going to hopefully show up. There we go. Go into the store and go into the DVDs. He's got some really good stuff with kids too. And that's from The Horrors of the Flood. That's where that video came from. It's excellent as far as flood models. And he talks about the hydroplate and also the Grand Canyon, the puzzle on the plateau. Those are two videos that need to be in every household, every church. This explains, Bryce and Canyonlands and Monument Valley and Zion, Petrified Forest. It all has to do with those lakes that Walt Brown discovered, those ancient lakes. So, and where else can you find that? Let's see, where else can you find that video? You can find that video at, let's see here, go into YouTube, go into, boy, that's kind of slow today. Go into Hydroplate Week of Celebration. Hydroplate Week of Celebration. Where is it? There it is. The Week of Celebration. Okay, the Week of Celebration. There's some playlists, and there's a playlist of Walt Brown videos. And this is the one that you just saw. This is Walt Brown explaining the hydroplate. And there's also a debate, Walt Brown debating somebody in Duluth, Minnesota. So those are very rare, and then you can see that. And then also on this Week of Celebration, we've got a whole week we were interviewing people, and here are the specific interviews we did. And there's some highlights from it on the playlists. And then there's a couple of years ago, we had the hydroplate conference where you can see PhDs and other people talking about the hydroplate. So this is a good source to get more information. Another source would be the Hydroplate Theory channel. And that was put in so that you could see, let's see, where's the Hydroplate Theory? Oh boy. Here it is, Hydroplate Theory right here. This channel was, that's on somebody else's. Yeah, but there is a, let's see, we'll go into Hydroplate Theory because there is another channel out there. That one was set up for the conference, Hydroplate Theory. Surprised it didn't show up. Hydroplate. Oh no, well, I see what's going on here. I got to go onto the big YouTube. Sorry about that. A little technical issues. Hydroplate Theory. Go into that channel. Hydroplate Theory right here. Okay, and so now you've got the week of celebration. You've got the conference. You've got some promos. It's similar to the other one. Doesn't have as much, and it's got some shorts there too. So there you have it. Let's see. Hopefully I was streaming that. Good, I was. You saw what I saw. So there you have it. So now, any comments? Not too much. So we'll sign off here, and we'll start in with Kevin Lee. It looks like he's got a lot to say. So again, thank you for your attention, and we shall see you in a few minutes. Have a blessed day.